Hello and welcome your viewers tonight. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Tonight we're talking about the security because Somalia had no peace and security almost lasted 22 years. Tonight we're talking about the security. Is Somalia a threat to the world or is Somalia a threat to UK, United Kingdom? My guest is Mohamed Elmi, the chairman of Somali Diaspora at UK. Mohamed, welcome to the program.
Thank you for having me.
As you know, Somalia had no central government almost lasted 22 years. And we have the biggest problem for the last 22 years. And the world now says Somalia is a threat. Take this, Somalia is a threat to UK, is a threat to the world. Is that correct? This is, we're talking about the security, and we want to, as a public, as a Somalian, wherever you are, to take a part and to talk how we gonna make Somalia a better country, how we gonna get a proper security in Somalia, how Somalia become a stable country. So let's take and let's participate for this program. The number is 0203 397 2095. Your comment is very important for us and for everybody. If you don't talk yourself, there are people who always represent you as Somalians. We had many national TVs talking about Somalia. Somalia is a threat to the world. What can you say, Mohamed? Tell us about it.
Well, I think this is an absolutely important, really, task, and an important, really, subject, really, and I'm being really proud to be participating this, endeavor. As you said, Somalia is a country that the last 2 decades having a security issue. We know that the Somali current government implemented in Mogadishu, and it takes, and they absolutely travel a long journey, really. But I think when you look at it in terms of security, Somalia, that's where the question the international community asking, can Somalia go back itself or stand at their own feet? We know that international community, they're putting a lot of effort to support the current government, which I think they got most of the recognitions, which I think now international community, they're dealing in the face of Somali, especially the current government, that the legitimate government that represent Somalia. I think the question, when it comes to in relation to a security aspect, I think this is the question. I think Somali people and the Somali country, as these nations, I don't think so. We can say Somali people, they are a terrorist. We cannot say that Somali people, they are threatening to the rest of the world, or maybe they're threatening to Europe, America, or this country as well. When into that, we know that we're not going to be naive at this stage. We know that there was a organization called Al-Shabaab. They've been really last few weeks we're hearing that the attack has been made, the major attack that Al-Shabaab carried out outside of the Somali theater, and that's what I think international community drawn about the Somali currently now in focus about Al-Shabaab and what's the link between the people of Somali itself. I don't think so. The people of Somali, they are associated and they are part of Al-Shabaab. But despite there was maybe a small number of margin Somali youth, whether it's in Mogadishu or whether it's somewhere else, maybe come in and brainwash and become extremists, fighting alongside with Al-Shabaab. There's a number, we can see that already. We have seen that. But I don't think so we can call in the name of Somali people or the Somali nation, they are, they're threatening to the rest of the world.
If we come back to Somali government and Somali people, why they can't develop unity and trust between the leaders? There are a lot of problem between the leaders of Somalia, and that is the main cause of problem of Somalia, because if these leaders united, then the Somalia would go into the right path. But at the moment, the politicians are divided, and the community, also the Somali themselves, are divided. How are we gonna defend ourselves? We say, for example, many international community are condemning Somalians, are responsible what had happened in Kenya, and other incidents around the world. And Somalia is a victim, you know it. Somalia had a civil war themselves, and also Somalia had the worst droughts for the last 60 years. In 2011, more than 260,000 lost their lives. Most were children and elders. So how are we going to sort it out? I mean, security is the most important. But many people of us do not know that. How are we going to sort out this security? How are we going to stop our younger people not to make any threat to the world? And how Somali themselves, rectify their differences?
Well, I think you mentioned in relation to the Somalia leaders not working together towards to how they stabilize the country they love that much, and I think, my opinion, I think there's only one common reason that I know that there is Somaliland, there is Puntland, there is rest of Southern nowadays. There are faction state, which I think the government now they are finding hard how they can bring a legitimate, proper institutions, which I think follow its own constitutions, which I think when you look at that way, Somalia they cannot be really divided in terms of there are people who have share common ground, which I think hasn't shared the rest of rest of the world. I would say that Somali people first, that if we identify is a nation that 100% Muslims, 100% Sunni. There is no what we call where the rest of the world sometimes they've been backlashed, Christians and Muslims, sometimes Shia and Sunni. What's happening sometimes in the Middle East, what's happening now in Iraq. But the Somali, when you come to, is a nation that 100% they go same culture, same language, same religion. But the core problem of Somalia, we found that we identified that is about tribalisms. The most major tribes they wanted to secure, they rule the rest of the Somali clans, and that's where the battle is. So every tribe, whether it's going to be our own nations, tribe A or maybe tribe B or tribe C. I mean, anybody when they come to the power, we see that the people who are surround them, the people who are always in the cabinet minister or maybe in office of the prime minister, office of the president, we see that when there is no a proper institution in Somalia, I'm afraid, and that is what I think the Somali community frightening, the Somali community leaders seeing that. We notice that start from President when Arte has been nominated and appointed, and those Somali community elders and all representatives, when they choose Dr. Abdulqasim Salat Hassan, he became a president. We remember that. We remember his follow success, the man called Abdullah Yusuf. We remember again Sheikh Sharif. We remember again the current president, and again all the prime ministers has been appointed. Those senior, those Somali president itself, those prime ministers who participate in the government. Really, we've seen that. I mean, anybody when he become a power, the people who surround them is their own client, their own tribe, their own cousins, their own, and that is not the way to run, really.
Okay. How are we going to change that route? If the leader always selects the close family or the close friends and don't let others to participate in building government, how are we going to end this kind of, as the president, he mentioned it when I met in Belgium. He said 3 years time Somalia will elect their leader. Do you think that is going to happen? Do you think we will have a leader that none of his client or none of his friends will participate of his government? Do you think so?
Well, I think there's only one thing is visible. One thing is practically possible. And one thing is possible is Somalia is a community, as you said, who has suffered in the last 2 decades because of lack of security. I think when the security take place itself, I think nowadays the UK government and their allies, international community, leading Turkey itself, I think now they are focusing how the Somali largest youth unemployment in history in a country who have absolutely devastated in lack of institutions. I think when the Somalia become a country especially those diaspora, when they invest in their country and they generate some sort of economical, that when I think the youth, they allowed anybody to work a decent job, somebody can feed their family. And I think when that mechanisms, has been put in place, then I think there is one way or another, in the next maybe 20 or 30 years, I won't say that in the next 4 years or maybe 3 years before the current government end their period, they will allocate a system that people generate. I think probably it's Somalia. What's driving is, remember that when we talk about piracy, when we talk about Al-Shabaab in itself, those who are youth, mainly young, who are joining Al-Shabaab or maybe joining a pirate itself, there was young people who has absolutely hopeless, who have last 2 decades. When somebody doesn't go, they say that when you got nothing to lose. If somebody, he is between 15 to 25, and he hasn't got nowhere to walk. When I think extremists, when they call it Al-Shabaab or maybe pirates, they say, okay, we can grant you this much of money or dollars, 20 grand, 30 grand or 40 grand. So what are you expecting from them? I think Somalia, if what we're telling them in the international community and those donors, what we're telling them is that they have to generate some sort of systems that to give the youth, those who have a lack of unemployment, lack of engaging themselves to find a job. And I think that if the international community and the country government, they put a place and they secure that the country starting where I think some sort of, some sort of area that people they can walk and they can get money at least, then that means I think that's how can they eliminate the main part of a problem.
Okay, there's no parties inside Somalia as far as we know. In Europe or America, they use parties. There's no parties. I don't know how it's going to be possible to be elected, a fine leader. But the security, when we come back to the security, is the Somali people really threat to UK? Because we have had the head of MI5 have said something. What do you know about it?
Well, I think this morning I have seen that UK major media, including Sky News, they was highlighting as a breaking news that since the current MI5 head, Mr. Andrew Barker, has come into the media first time since April, has been appointed as head of MI5, and quoting saying that this great nation or this great country maybe will they will see that there was a level of threat. The next 3 years or so, there will be, a major attack will come, and maybe there was possibility to come major attacks once a year in the next 3 years. When he's saying that, I don't think so. He will come up.
Do you think he means those groups in Somalia or particular Somali people or other networks around the world? What does he mean?
Well, he hasn't said really, and it's obvious that the threat he was talking about itself is it's Al Qaeda and Al Shabaab, obvious. And this is, we remember that, mainly I think this development in the security, there was they were finding some sort of level of degree. What happened to Kenya, a lot of international community media has been captured and forefront playing about Al-Shabaab. If they maybe made possible to happen what happened to Nairobi, this can be happen anywhere in the world, anytime, any minute. So I think what they're saying was that they're not saying particularly in Somalia. We're aware that the people who are behind Al-Shabaab, they jumped on the boat and they just claimed themselves that the people who were behind. But I don't think so. Now the case was Al-Shabaab was behind it in the attack of Nairobi. But I think when come to here, there was a great discussion we had MI5 officer itself. And we as a community leaders, we sit down together, and we haven't seen some sort of a picture that they have finding themselves that maybe the Somali youth who live in UK are threatening the Somali, threatening the security in London Street or Birmingham Street. So that's not the case for me.
So we have had many media outlets talking about Somalia is a failed state. There is Al-Qaeda in Somalia, and the people of Somalia, majority are peace lovers. They live in Europe, they live in America. They want to rebuild their country. They want support to their people. They want to build the future of their children. But there are threats there. if the Somali being labeled, you know, a terrorist nation, how are they going to develop?
Well, you know,
because the youngsters, some of the younger people are afraid to travel now because what's happening in Kenya, and others, you know, they can't travel. And if any younger person trying to go back to Somalia and support even the current government in Somalia, he's afraid himself. He says, look, I can't travel.
Well, I don't think so that, you know, this case will be related to the Somalia. One thing we know and we acknowledge it's that Europe leading the UK government, now they're trying to bring and they host some major conference really, which I think sympathizing the current government, as I said before, and include even this, I think Great Britain, I think is living one of the, you know, major Somali community living outside of the country, and I think it's almost saying 400 to 500,000 Somali community are living here. But I think the question is what they seen about the country they're living with. I think number one, I found them that a lot of youth, maybe elders, I mean, you know, a women representative, anybody we met, and those who come to our office, and those sometimes we met in where Somali community socialize.
But there are suspicion, you know, there are suspicion, and how we gonna tell our government here and say, look, Somali younger people or Somali youth or Somali community are not threat to UK? Simple.
Well, no. I was coming to that stage before you interrupted me. I think the Somali community UK, they have acknowledged and welcomed and really the way the current coalition government leading Mr. Cameron and his personal initiative, which I think he carried out 2 major conferences, which bring 55 nations, 55 countries, including UN, you know, and all major player. I mean, international community, bringing them together and finding the Somalia to stand themselves. We know that the UK government and the community living here, even themselves, acknowledge that UK become the first major Western country to establish itself their own diplomat in Somalia. When William Hague went to Mogadishu and introduced his ambassador to Somalia, this shows how UK nowadays, the last 24 months, they're leading how the Somalia stabilized. And I think I'm aware that, again, the statement he made, William Hague, when the attack in Nairobi happened, saying that himself, that we as United Kingdoms and the rest of the international community, including Kenya, we will never stop supporting the current government of Somalia. Somalia, we bring them a stage that they can stand themselves. That shows that a lot of youth who live in UK, a lot of, you know, Somali intellectuals who live here, they sympathize that, and that touched really their hearts. Because if somebody trying to bring back the security and the stability that our country is seeking for so long, and those diaspora who live in outside from the country, they are absolutely having, you know, most of them, those we talk about, those we share views and ideas, everybody's got, you know, homesicking really, and everybody want to really to live in this, you know, country, and everybody willing to go back in Somalia. And we've seen that in the last really couple 14 months, 12 months, we've seen that Mogadishu are really heavily diaspora engaging, going there, despite Al-Shabaab was bombing a day or day after, killing, I mean, innocent people, but still diaspora, they declined. They said no matter whatever Al-Shabaab happen, no matter whatever they're doing, this will not stop us to gain our country, to develop our country, to be part of, you know, our society, to educate them. So a lot of diaspora people really, I as a chair of diaspora, I know that a lot of people from UK, they're taking a good project development to their own country, whether it's Somaliland, whether it's a Puntland, whether it's a, you know, Hiran, whether it's going to be Galmudug, whatever it is Somali they believe in. So we know that the diaspora, they are core important. They are core role to bring the stability and the security that the country wants so long. But I think the question is that UK, they are not threat. The Somali youth who live in the UK, they are not absolutely threat to their own country. They're also aware, those youth we're talking about, this is a great country who give them free health, schools, medicals, hospitals, everything. Give equal opportunity to those white people we came with. And the reception that they give us, you know, not in even UK, rest else in Western is mostly Scandinavians. So they know that, you know, I mean, there is a give and take. And if somebody look after you, look after your family, look after your daughter, giving you everything you want, there's no way you're against them. There's no way you're going to bump them anyway.
Absolutely. Do you know that today is the Prime Minister of UK, David Cameron's birthday? Do you know that?
Well, yes, I knew that, yes.
Okay. Have you sent any cards and say?
Well, I think we signed a card, absolutely, this morning, and it's on the way to 10 Downing Street on behalf of Somali Diaspora, for myself as a chair. We sent it to them and said to him, wish him happy birthday. Yeah, we did that, yeah, absolutely.
Absolutely.
We're looking forward to see that, yeah.
Let's come back. I mean, the president of Kenya has blamed Somalia and they can't sort out their house. And he said also, we're gonna stay in Somalia as long as we want. So how are we gonna respond as Somalia? Because we know the Somali government did not respond that. So as a chair of Diaspora, as a community of Somalians, how are we gonna respond that? You know, I think this is a humiliation, and this is a national humiliation for Somalis. You know, if somebody says, hey, I want to tell you what I can do in your country. So how the Somalian, you know, we know Somalia is a broken country now, but the people are building it. So how are they going to respond for this?
Well, in terms of, what do you mean? In terms of, He
said, you have to sort out your problem. You have been killing 22 years. You guys, you cannot unite, you know. Don't bring your problems in our country. That's what he was saying it. But nobody has responded.
But
he said also, I'm going to stay in the country as much as we like.
Well, I think it's immature really to say that. If I look at it and if I come to in a political angle, I mean, somebody who's a very senior person and leading the nations, he cannot simply comment that really, because that I think he's sending himself a wrong signal to the rest of those who can threaten himself or his country really. And I don't think so. That to me, I will see that is immature. There's a better way to say. I mean, there's a better way, to engage, absolutely, and say so. But I think that is to me. I mean, as a leader and quoting that, sort of, talking in terms of that language. I think that's to me. I will see that immature. But I think a lot of people, they may take that, as I said, in negative aspect, really.
What Somalian, I mean, 23 years, we're nearly 23 years, 25 years, 27 years since 1988, or since 1985, Somalia, we're killing each other and deeply divided society. I think some people are blaming for that for us. Isn't it time we confess and say, look, that was a mistake, and now we have to carry on our life. We have to, get together and forgive those who commit the heinous crime against the Somali people, and start, the love and unity as Rwanda did. Somalia, the Rwandan killed each other within 3 months, over 1 million people. 3 months and 90 days. But they, is one of the best country now in Africa.
They overcome, yeah.
Yes. So how Somalia overcome this problem? I'm sick of tired to see, the Kenyan troops inside Somalia, or the Ethiopians. The government cannot do anything. Somalia is locked up. So how are we gonna cut this lockup?
Well, I think, Dal, I'm really pleased to see that, you're exercising some level of degree that you feel sorry for yourself that a country even that we belongs to and we came from, we educated, and sometimes, to be honest, sometimes I will see, I remember that when Diaspora times, how our country was a powerful, how our country was part of, decision makers. We remember that in Siad regime is those who created IGAD, So the IGAD now controlling Somalia, but IGAD, the ideas of IGAD came from Diaspora. That is a country we used to belong. That is a country who was most of the nation powerful in military, economically, politically. You see, and now we used to lead, not in East Africa, but Somalia used to lead in even in Africa. So I mean, Diaspora, sometimes they used to call Lion of Africa. He was being prestiged in the stage of like Nelson Mandela, to be honest. But I think a country like that, That's where we were brought up. That's where we went to school. That's where we were educated. That's where we really, sometimes when we look back, 1991, and sometimes 80s, 70s, 60s, I mean, Diaspora has built a great nation and great country. But the question is how he made that. That's what the question is. How he maintained that. I think Somalis...
Can we go back that position where we were?
I mean, we can go back, but I think now it's a bit too late, I will say this, because I think I remember now, because now you see Somali politics...
It's not functioning.
It's not functioning.
It's not working.
Anybody can talk Somali politics. Anybody, whether he's educated or whether he's a cab driver or whether he's a bus driver, now they will go most of TV. They will participate in Somali politics. Why? They don't have anything whatsoever background of research of what Somali look like. I mean, this is a nation now. Everybody now Somali is politicians. But before, when Diaspora was ruling, I think we knew that, yeah, there's certain peoples ruling the country, and we know that there is a fairness. We know that there was a lack of sometimes of themselves, a lot of Somali community or maybe clients, they see that will be themselves marginalized to be part of the government.
Absolutely.
But I think unless we will get, I mean, in that Diaspora times is the past. Now the Somali now they come together and finding now every tribe of Somalia they want to be part of that camp. So the Somalia is they call Hashim and Dek. So they want that be part of every nation.
Absolutely.
But the Diaspora time he is the one who win and said, okay, I think the man who born in Baydhabo can be a governor of Hargeisa. The man who born Hargeisa can be governor of Kismayo.
True.
The man who born in Kismayo can be governor of Beledweyne.
Yes.
And no one will talk. So no one will bring the issue of this. So, but until the Somali, the Somali go back?
They were
question.
trusted those days. My view is I would like you to be participate for this program. I mean, we've been talking and we would like to hear your comments. It's very important to you call. It's very important to you talk yourself, for your country, for what you believe, how Somalia can be a better country, how Somalia can be one of the strongest nation as we are now, as the many countries Somalia named a failed state. And failed state, I think, is a shame name. I think we shouldn't accept that. I mean, we should accept, say, look, every nation has been through what we're through now. I mean, they had a civil war, Britain and America, 200 years. They were fighting in Washington, 200 years from today. But now look how they developed, because they find out the war is not a solution. Division is not a solution. So what is that? What is the views? I mean, how are we going to change the international minds who think in Somalia is a threat? It's a threat to the security around the world, because there's no control now in Somalia. The government is not effective because of, as you say, the clan-based governing party in Somalia. And unless we change this, And another thing is, what makes me sometimes sad, we are Muslim. Islam teaches a moral. People are stealing, the wealth of the country, and they're building houses outside the country, And you see people how they're suffering. 9 of 10 of Somali children are out of school, and nobody talks about it. There are many people are suffering every day in Somalia. Nobody talks about it. The government doesn't talk. The top official of Somalia does not talk. Nobody talks about it. The suffering of Somali women is relentless. So what is your mind? How are we going to change this? We are victims for everything. But we need to change. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, sorry, there's a call. Brother, welcome to our program and make your comments. You are on air.
Oh, thank you very much. I was going to say, mashallah, Somalia was a beautiful country. It was. I was just watching some videos from YouTube, on how Mogadishu was, in the 1960s. And looking at it now, it is crazy. I think, as a young man, I haven't grown up in Mogadishu, back in the days in the 60s. I've only, been born in the 90s and, in the 1980s and stuff.
Right.
But, it's a shame, really, because, it's the elders, I think, that have let us down in a way. And, the only thing we can do is, just study, have our education here and go back there and try to rebuild the country.
I agree with that, because if Somalia had a 40%, if people were educated 40%, Somalia would survive. But unfortunately, our people still are ignorant. Majority of it, when I say 10 out of 9 are out of school, that is the biggest problem, you know. Britain, they talks about every child who live in Britain has to go to school. But Somalia, our children are out of school. Our ladies are out of school. People left ignorance, you know, trouble, life. And how are we going to change for that? How do you think we're going to change that?
Exactly. That's the question I have too, you know. How can we make change? You know, can we do the same thing as, you know, as what the Egyptians did, you know, for everyone to come together and just say enough is enough, and you know, and make, or do we just wait for the government and let them, you know, make the decisions?
Do you think Somalia is a threat to the international security?
I don't think it's a threat to the international security at all, because you know, Somalia is a weak country. You know, it's a weak country. It's run by, you know, militants, uneducated militants, and you know, it's just a very weak country compared to Britain, for example, or compared to the US.
But we have more, young educated today, comparing with the previous generation, but still we have a lack of unity. And we thought the youth can become a role model for Somalis, and still there is a gap. So how are we going to fill that gap?
Absolutely. I mean, with the younger generation, I think, you know, I can see a lot of, you know, I've got quite a few friends actually myself, you know, that are studying very hard. They're studying master, you know, they're getting their master degrees and, you know, studying the media. I think the media is one of the most powerful tools actually to create change.
Absolutely.
And I think that's, you know, that's the way that, you know, the youngsters can play their part anyways. So
yourself, what you thinking about? I mean, we had almost nearly 30 years of war, of civil war between the Somalians, and you know, for that reason, Somalia is susceptible for everything. So, you know, anybody can tell anything. Anybody can get in Somalia and violate the sovereignty of Somalia, and nobody talks about it. Even as the president of Kenya says, we can stay as long as we want, and the government of Somalia failed to respond that, and the Somali community also failed to respond that. What are you going to say for that?
I agree. Funny enough, actually, I was just watching an interview of Fawzia Ahmed. Was it the foreign minister of Somalia? And she was in the news, you know, clearly saying the U.S. can come in and, you know, and they don't have to ask for our permission, and they can throw as much drones in our country as possible without our permission. That's crazy. That is crazy. How could you let another country, you know, throw drones in your country without your permission?
Absolutely.
Or even
go on.
Drones. That's crazy, anyways.
Absolutely. I mean, United States is a sovereign nation, and Somalia is a sovereign nation too. I mean, United States isn't it to respect the Somali sovereignty, not only to respect it for the Somali government. I mean, Somali government might be represent Somalians, but where is the voice of Somalians? Somalians, they want represented themselves and protected their people as the American government protecting its people. Isn't it unfair if Americans violating for the sovereignty of Somalia?
Absolutely. I mean, every country can come into the government, can come into Somalia, and just do whatever they want to do. Like you said already, they can do whatever they want to do, because obviously, again, there is no structure. There isn't, you know, the government is in there, but they're not doing anything. You know, they just sat on their desks and, you know, and taking in the money and just eating and buying houses in London and, you know, and buying houses in America.
Absolutely, it's crazy. I mean, how, you know, Somalia, anybody can get in and can get out, you know. But when we're traveling, you know, we can't get in Kenya as we Somalian, but the Kenyans can access and do whatever they want in Somalia. Isn't it, that is a shame for Somali government, is a shame for Somali people.
Well, I think...
wait, stay, don't go away, just stay.
Well, I think what my fellow citizens saying that Deputy Prime Minister and Foreign Minister Affairs, Fauzia, said on an interview that America can go without the country's, permissions. That shows, immature really respond. Because I think a foreign minister, a country who I think international community recognize, Obama himself sit down with our president and give a recognition that the Somali will be
sovereign nation.
Sovereign nations and
respected
and will be respected, and saying that because the foreign minister is a really is
the head of the country.
Is head of the country when it comes to
foreign affairs.
Foreign affairs, and I think it shouldn't be say that, and I think it should be something the foreign ministers themselves, when they come to country, should be questioning really.
What about
and the rest of when every Thursday the prime minister himself shall dawn and his cabinet, something that they should ask Fauzia in relation to what she said and what she quote, because you cannot just say that if anybody country who want to fight with Al Qaeda or Al Shabaab extremists, they can come anytime they want, so that she will give them some sort of green light. Ethiopians and other allies, they can come to the country anytime they want and they do whatever they want. So that is something that I think the government itself to question. Somebody who's a very senior level of government saying that, I totally agree with my fellow citizens saying, really.
Absolutely.
It's sad, really.
Absolutely. What can you add for that? I mean, Somalia is very susceptible now. I mean, they can't protect themselves. They're fragile. And I think Somalia needs someone who has got a strong feeling and a strong leader who can protect the country's sovereignty and the people's rights. And we don't see that in Somali government.
I agree 100%. To be honest with you, in the actual politics business, and it's just the show is very, 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 very interesting. So I just wanted to comment on it. And it's a shame, really, because, I would love for my country to be safe and for me to be able to go back there every year for a holiday, for example. But we can't do that right now. As a young person, I could only dream of going back to Somalia and going there on a holiday, but we can't do that right now because so much war and so much politics happening.
Absolutely,
it's crazy. But
do you know Somalia has the longest beach in Africa, 3,000 kilometers. We have a size land mass of like all European countries of water. I mean, we can generate $400 or $500 million a year, but still we're begging international community. This is shame, innit?
Exactly. That's the scary thing about it, because Somalia has the potential to be. I think I read it on the news somewhere on the internet as well. But Somalia has the potential to be a #1 tourist destination. It has the potential to be a #1 tourist destination, and every country, even Dubai, for example, its oil and its gold is running out. That's why it's starting to build, tall buildings just to become a tourist destination.
Amazing.
And it's working. But Somalia has the potential, even until up to this point. If the government pulls their weights, it has the potential to become a #1 tourist destination.
Do you think the people of Somalia, what they have possessed, but they don't believe that? I mean, Somalia is a very, very rich country, is a paradise country, but unfortunately, people are not aware of that. What can you add of that?
Exactly. No, I agree 100%. Especially with our own Somali community as well, because I don't know. I think it's because of the lack of education and the lack of hope. To be honest with you, Somali people have no hope anymore when it comes to our country, because we've been fighting for 20, 30 years now. There isn't any more hope. We're not like, for example, Egypt, where the whole country woke up and made a protest and made a change in their country. Us, we're just sitting in our houses day in, day out, debating in coffee shops and not doing anything about it. I mean, if we was to go out there and actually do something, then we might have better chances of rebuilding our country together. It doesn't take only 20 officials, for example, a president, minister, and prime ministers and stuff to rebuild the country. It takes the one of my favorite quotes actually is, "It takes a village, to raise a child." So, with Somalia, for example, it would take the whole Somali community to rebuild Somalia.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you for calling us, and we would like to have more calls if anybody wants to be participate for this program.
Okay,
thank you for calling for us. And as a young man saying, Somalia is a paradise country. We don't know that. That we possess one of the best country in the world. We have got the climate, we have got resources, we have got petrol, we have got 60 million or 70 million livestock, we have fish, we've got rivers, and we're still hungry. Our government, our people, they always call it international community. When we gonna end this?
Well, I think
begging is bad. Well, begging is really bad. How we gonna end this begging? And we become, a responsible, respected to the world,
I think one thing is important, what he said, that the Somalia, in terms of resource, we know that the Somalia has got, when you're looking in Africa, out of 53 countries in African nations, we're the second. South Africa is number one, Somalia is the second. We've got a seaside, longest, 3,333 miles coast side. And I remember that before it started, the first conference that Cameron was calling, I was one of the participants of Guardian's newspaper online when at the time the conference happening, and they asking us this question and brought out what Somalia made so attractive and why UK now they are so leading forefront in Somali issue. And there was what I think they shared with us was really Somalia, they said, is if Somalia natural resource bring out, especially the oil,
the gas,
they say that the oil between Brava City and Kismaya alone, if that come out, they say it, not the oil was on the ground, not the gas, not highly uranium Somalia have, not the livestock Somalia independent on the last central government. So they say that only that oil if bring out, Somalia will become number 8. And I think instead Kuwait will go to number 9. So that is how they treat it.
Wow.
So you can imagine, Somalia, how potentially they are so important. But the Somali, people and their own leaders, they doesn't understand that the core of important, that how their country can make a paradise. Of course, I won't be surprised at the time when Somalia was established country before when Siad Barre regimes, how really the tourists, we remember, how the country, they are so badly coming to our beach, enjoying our country, and the Somali climate itself really is unbelievable. But I think something that the Somali people, they should think about it. How can they be reunite again, come together and use their brain? And how can they come together and share this? Because I think the Somali natural resource is something bigger than 9 millions that now Somalia estimated themselves, including those diaspora who live outside the country. I think probably if the brain works, if they come together and unite, as I said, God himself in the Quran, if you unite and come together, you will win. So we already seen that the fragmented community, the client itself, that doesn't help us. That will absolutely doesn't bring together. But I think if they use and at least they read the Quran, the beautiful book God gives them in our country, Islam's, those nations who share Sunni, all of them, if they come together and see, okay, what happened in the past, it happened already. Let's come together, unite, and share, the value of Somali. So now it seems to nowadays there's no value. There's no, nationalism, Somalis. So every tribe, they want to make themselves wherever they live and say, okay, I live this part of the Somalia, so I want to be my own independent. Everybody wants to claim it. And that will not happen, that will not help. And the tribe cannot bring a government. 2 tribes or 3 tribes come together, cannot reform a government. And that's why the international community declining those who try to associate themselves. I think unity, what the international community, Western society, looking for to bring the Somali people come together as a nation, and solve their problems. So no matter whatever happened in the international community, now we're aware that already 1.8 billion has been pledged to Somali people, and that money belongs to the Somali people. So it depends on themselves how they share, you see. And I believe if they put aside their difference and come together in common purpose, I think they can reach that.
Absolutely. If you want to, inshallah, talk to this subject tonight, go to the Daily News chat room. We will carry on tonight. Somalia is not a failed state, but we want to build our country. If you think Somalia, we can make better where it is now, it's your responsibility. It's not only the current leader of Somalia or the leaders of the regions. We all need to stand together, share together, eat together, respect one another, and always, always live together, inshallah. I have a dream, Somalis, and I hope Somalia become a better country, a country that protects its citizens, a country that protects the human rights, the whole world. I hope, and I'm waiting. So inshallah, our program is going to be end with the next few minutes. If you want to make a comment, please call this number 0203 397 2095. Your call is important. This is your voice. This is Star TV. If you wanna call us now. You have got the last few seconds. So, what do you want? What signal do you want to send it to the Somali people who's listening tonight or might be listening in the future? Because Somalia a failed state, security is failed, people have failed. There's no functioning. The government's not functioning. People are not functioning. We get blamed all the time. There are foreign troops. We need a real solution. What is that real solution for Somalis?
Well, I think the way I see is Somalia is not a failed state. Somalia is a country who really international community doesn't give opportunity nowadays. It seems they're giving. I think I believe that international community and those neighboring countries, they're having an affair or maybe some level of interest, and they are some of the part of the problem of Somalia. And I think now since international community now they come together, how the Somali rebuild again. We see that the momentum, how EU they come together, all 27 countries members of EU, pledging economic development, how UK, who's one of the most powerful nations, have so much influence in the world, how he's leading and lobbying how to become Somali citizens. I think we have some sort of hope, and I hope the Somali people and the diaspora itself and those who live in Somalia itself, if we come together, and I hope we can make Somalia one day again a country or maybe a nation that maybe Middle East themselves, some of the country, they come and seeking or maybe looking for a job or maybe looking a permanent work to live in Somalia. That can happen, but when they come together themselves and unite.
Mohamed, thank you for coming, and I want to say, my fellow Somalis, thank you for watching. Inshallah, next time until we see, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. This is Star TV.